Congratulations on purchasing your very own JB rack. You're going to learn how to assemble it with this video. It's a pretty easy process, and we're going to do this in a couple of steps. The first step is going to be inventory. We're going to make sure that we got all the parts that we need, and then we're going to go ahead and start the install and setup process. Okay, quick inventory of the small parts you can expect. You will need to have a bag of end caps. You're going to need to have a bag of pedal straps. You'll have the number of pedal straps that you have as far as the number of bikes. So this particular rack is a 5 bike, so I have 5 pedal straps. You're going to have these quick release cotter pins. You're going to have 3 of those. You're going to have 1 big massive bolt. This is going to be for the main mast. You're going to have 2 washers and a locking nut for that. You're also going to have a bag of long bolts with washers and nuts, and another bag of little bit shorter bolts with washers and nuts. Then you're going to have this bag of bolts. It's going to be very small. You're only going to have 2 in there. Then you're going to have a little bit bigger bolts with washers and locking nuts also. So you're going to want to make sure you have 3 bags of somewhat longer bolts of varying sizes. Then you're going to have this really big hitch pin that's threaded, and the hitch pin will actually go through here, which is nice. And then you're going to have 2 additional bolts with washers and a locking nut. Then you're going to have these black spacers right here of varying sizes that we'll use throughout the rack. You're going to have these kind of rubbery plastic feeling big washers. You're also going to get a small box like this that's going to include the anti-sway setup for your hitch. Now, as far as tools go, you are going to get a 13mm wrench, a 24mm wrench, a 16mm wrench, and then a 5 and a 6mm Allen key. My recommendation is if you have a socket set, find the 24, 13, and the 16 and use those. It'll make this process a little bit quicker, but if you need tools, they do include these in the box, which is nice. So you can assemble this if you don't have any tools at all. Now let's take a look at the plates that come with the rack. These are going to be your mast plates. This is going to be your main plate. You're going to get 2 of these, kind of the same shape, but different angles. And then you're also going to get these 2 large plates here. These are also going to be part of the main mast setup. So you're going to want to look for these 4 as one of your main parts. Then you'll also get several small plates, these 2 rectangle plates, these kind of triangle rectangle plates, and then these 2 L bracket plates right here, along with a single L bracket plate here. Next up, you will get these little rubber straps that will be used to lock down your wheels. This is your bike tire hoop. You will get 1 of these for each bike that you have. So if you have the 3 bike setup, you'll get 3 of these. And if you have the 6 bike setup, you'll get 6 of these. Next up is the top portion that's going to hold the top bar and the main mast. So the main mast will come in 2 parts now. You're going to get this main part here that will have JB Rack and a Scan Me feature for you to be able to go straight to the JB Rack website. And then you'll get a second one. This will slide into this one, and I'll show you guys how to do that when we start the setup. This big guy here with 3 holes and the threaded hitch pin setup is going to be the actual hitch part of this rack. This is what's going to slide into your hitch on your vehicle, and then the hitch pin is going to go through here. You'll thread it on, and then the main mast will attach to this section. These 2 bars right here will have an L shape in them, and these are going to be your top bars. So this is what's actually going to hold on to your front wheel whenever you have this full rack assembled. Now this is the lower bar setup. It's going to be in 3 pieces. These 2 pieces will slide together, and then this bar will bring them all together with a few bolts. So now you've seen all the parts. Let's go outside and get this bike rack assembled. All right, guys, we're out here at my barn, and the best way to install this, like I was saying earlier, is either on the vehicle you're going to be primarily using the rack with, or using one of JB Rack's shed stands. Today, I'm going to be using my Toyota Tacoma, as this would be the primary vehicle that I would be using this rack on. Let's go ahead, let's get started. Okay, so the very first piece that you're going to want to get is this. This is the hitch bar, and basically this is going to have 3 large holes, and on the brand new version, this is going to have threaded holes on one side. And that's going to allow you to use this threaded hitch pin. Let's go ahead and let's get this installed. Now, when installing this, just put this into the receiver hitch and push it as far back as you can, and then pull it back just a little bit to get the furthest hole on the setup. You want this as close to your vehicle as possible. Then take your threaded hitch pin, put it in the opposite side of where the threads were, and just kind of push that through, and then you can start threading this on, and then you can install your cotter pin. Okay, now that we've got this installed, we can go ahead and move on to our next step. You're gonna need these plates right here, and they are basically going to sit just like this on the rack. We're gonna run 2 bolts through here right now, and then we'll run a third one here in just a little bit because we'll need to add some additional plates. So you're gonna use your M10 bolts right here, and you're gonna use 1 washer, and then you're going to put your first plate on, and so the curved part is gonna go towards the top. You'll just sit just like this. We're gonna run this bolt right through. Once you've got that ran through, pick up another one with a washer on it and run it through. Now you can take your other plate and you can just pop this one on here, just like this. Then we can take washers and put the washers on here. And then you can put your 16mm locking nuts on. And also leave these bolts just a little bit loose. That way you can get the center mast in here in just a second. All right, so the next step is to get the center mast, and we'll put that on. So the center mast comes in 2 pieces now. You're gonna wanna get this lower piece right here that has this extension up top. This will go right down here in the bottom. Then you're also gonna need these 2 kind of gigantic, kind of flexible plastic washers. Then you're gonna need your M16 bolt and the locking nut and the washers. How this is going to be installed is you're basically going to slide this down, and then you're going to slide these washers in, pushing this bolt through. So with 1 washer on one side, go ahead and put one of these plasticky looking washers in, slightly push that through. This is why you want to leave this just slightly loose, so you have a little bit of room to play with it. Okay. Push that through, and then before you get over to the other side, grab your other plasticky washer and just slide this down through here, lining it up with this hole, and then you can push that all the way through. Add your extra washer, and then take your bolt and thread this on. Okay, at this point, this is what this should look like. You should have the center mast in there. You do not want to tighten this bolt all the way down because you want this to be able to pivot just like this. Once you've got that done, I do recommend taking a couple of these hitch pins and we will pop them through here. This will just kind of keep that center mast upright. Okay, for the next couple of steps, we are going to use these plates right here, and then you're also going to find 2 large spacers in the spacer bag that are the exact same length. We're going to use these also. You're also going to continue to use the rest of your M10 bolts. Same bolts that we put down here in the bottom to bolt this up and to bolt on these spacers. So let's go ahead and get this first spacer installed. You're simply going to take this spacer just like this. There's a hole right down here that you're just going to slide this in between, just like this. If you have these bolts just a little bit loose, it does help the process. And then you'll just slide one of your M10 bolts right through. Then you're going to put on a washer and then a locking nut. And we'll tighten all this down here in just a second. Now we're going to take these plates and you're going to have them in this particular orientation with this part down and the pointy part up. This is going to basically sit just like this up against it. This will be used for the slow fold strut if you did purchase the slow fold strut. I highly recommend it. It's something that I really enjoy on my JB rack. It just makes it easier to raise and lower. Now for this top bolt right here, you are going to need one of your spacers. Then you're just going to basically slide that in there just like that. This is going to be a little bit trickier just because you've got so many things going on. Then you're going to take this plate and you're going to basically place it back over here, and then you'll place one right here also. Let's go ahead and get one of our M10 bolts with the washer already installed. I'm going to thread it through right here. That way it's kind of already ready. And then I'm going to stick my little spacer right down in here, line it up with the holes, and then thread this through. Now once you've got that lined up, I recommend taking your next M10 bolt and putting it down here in the bottom. Just slide it all the way through. That way it stabilizes this plate and you don't have to hold on to it anymore. There we go. We got that in. Now we can go ahead and take our other plate right here and put it on this side. Slide it onto the bolts, just like that. Put on a washer, on each one, and then your locking nut. Now remember, these are the 16 millimeters, so you'll need that to tighten them. So next up, before we actually install the top of the mast, I'm going to go ahead and install the lower portion of the rack. Might as well do it because we're going to be using these lower holes right down here. And we're going to be using the big bag of M8 bolts. This is going to be the biggest bag of bolts that you've got. So just get some bolts and a few washers and some locking nuts, and we can get this process started. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is locate the two lowest holes. Grab two M8 bolts, two washers, and then we can go ahead and slide on the adapters. Now you will have two of these plates in your bike rack, no matter which one you got. So you're going to simply put them like this, slide them through, then take your other one and place it on the opposite side. And then you're going to need to add two washers and two locking nuts. Now these locking nuts are going to be your 13 millimeter locking nuts, so you'll need to change out to your other wrench if you've got it. So the next step, we're going to be attaching the lower bars to the plates that we just put on. You're going to need three things. You're going to need two of these. They're basically going to attach similar to this right here. These holes will line up and make it variable. And then this plate right here, which is going to go in front of it to kind of give it a nice clean look and keep it all together really cleanly. So we'll go ahead and use our M8 bolts again. I would just prep probably 4 of these. It'll just make the whole process a little bit easier. And you will notice that on this setup, there is an L this way, and on the opposite one, the L is the opposite direction. So it will come together something like this. Pop this on here. What I recommend doing is sliding that down to where you can see that it's going to go through the holes. Grab 2 M8 bolts, slide them all the way through. That way you've got them there. And then you're going to put them through the corresponding holes on the plates that we installed. And you can kind of let go of that. Just be careful because it's not secured yet. Grab 2 washers and 2 locking nuts. Slide those on the back. We're not going to tighten this down just yet. We're just going to get these nuts on here. That way this piece doesn't come off. So that'll prevent it from popping off on us while we kind of move this around. Now you can take the other side. My recommendation, get the 2 bolts that you already prepped, and then you'll simply just slide it into the opposite side. Should line up just right. Then you can take your M8 bolts, slide those through, make sure that they go through the corresponding holes on the plates that we installed. And then grab 2 washers and 2 locking nuts to secure this in place. Now, before you fully install these bolts up here, if you have this little adapter in your adapter plate bag, you're going to want to make sure that you install that on either side with the little L part in the middle of the rack. This is going to be used, I know, on the 5 bike rack to be able to hold the 5th wheel or the center wheel right in the middle. So just either side, doesn't matter which side, just remember to install this plate if it came in your bike rack. But this is what it should look like once you've got it fully tightened down. So we've got the center mast on. We do need to add a couple of more bolts up here just to make it extra secure, and we'll go ahead and do that now. So let's go ahead and grab a couple of M8 bolts and just slide these through these holes. This just gives it a little bit extra security while you're going down the road. So in the latest version of the JB Rack setup, this center mast is actually split up into 2 parts, making it a little bit more sturdy and also just saving on some package size. And all you have to do is just simply slide this down in here with the corresponding holes lining up with the corresponding holes on the lower part. Now, whenever you slide this down in here, it can be a little bit tight, but that's good because it'll prevent any movement from happening. Go ahead and just pop that in until you get it all the way down to the bottom. If you do have a little bit of trouble getting this mast all the way down, you can use a rubber mallet or a soft hit mallet and just kind of get this to tap down just a little bit at a time. Now you do want to make sure that you get this put in the right orientation because this would be almost nearly impossible to take off if you did not line up the holes properly. So just make sure that you have the outside holes lined up with the outside holes of the lower portion before you go and put this on. So we're going to use these 2 plates, and they're going to basically go on the upper holes right here. This is going to be for the slow fold strut. If you guys are purchasing the slow fold strut, you want to make sure that you install this along with the upper plate. You can put bolts all the way down this if you would like, make you feel a little bit more secure. I'm going to put 2 down here, and then I'm going to put these plates up top just like this. So take one of your triangular plates and then put the bolt in the very back side of it. And then the upper single hole on this mast, you'll just slide that through. And then you'll do another one for the bottom hole, and then put this plate on the other side. Let's go ahead and grab 2 more bolts and washers and locking nuts, and we're going to place them in these bottom holes right here. Washer on. Now this will secure the upper mast to the lower mast. Now there are 4 holes here, so if you want to add 4, you can, but I believe 2 would be sufficient. Now that we've got that all secured, let's go ahead and start working on the upper portion of the bike rack. Since I have the 5 bike rack, there is an extra step that we need to take, and I'm going to show you guys that right now. So with the 5 bike rack, you're going to have a bike holder right in the middle. So we have to do something a little bit different. And inside your bag of M8 bolts, you're going to get a really short one. This is what we're going to use here next to get this process started. Now, if you use any of the other bike racks, this step isn't necessary. You can go ahead and just start installing the center mast like we will here in just a minute. And then you're going to want to grab this plate right here. This is the brand new JB Rack top plate. You'll know it's the front because it's got JB actually engraved or cut out in the rack. I think that looks really good. But we're going to go ahead and how this is going to work is basically this is going to sit on top just like this. And then this is going to sit on top up there. But in order to get this installed, we need to actually install this tire holder first. And let me show you guys how this is done. Okay, for the next step on the 5 bike rack, it's going to be easier if you do this either on the ground or on a table. You're going to need both the front and the back of the upper main part. And then you're also going to need your wheel holder. And then you're going to need both your bars for the upper portion. So go ahead and just get all that stuff put in place. That way you have it handy. Now, important note, make sure that this little hook right here is facing the front of the rack. So whenever we go to install this, the JB logo that's carved out, you're going to want to make sure that that hook is facing forward. That's just going to be so you can strap your wheel down, and it'll be a little bit easier when you go to lock your bike into place. So with the 5 bike rack, you have to put this middle one on first before you can get these bars fully installed. You won't have access to these bolts after you get this whole thing set up. So it's important to get this middle tire holder on first. Grab this very small bolt that came in your M8 packet. Get a washer on it. 4 holes up here. You can either put the starting hole over here or you can put it over here. It doesn't matter, but you're going to line up with one of these holes and one of these holes. It doesn't really matter which one you line it up with. It's just kind of personal preference. So you'll just set this on here just like this. And the recommendation is to put the Allen key side of the bolt underneath. So you just pop it in just like that. Put a washer on top and then get a locking nut. Thread that on. Now that you've got that started, we can go ahead and put our next bolt all the way through. But in order to do that, we are going to have to install one of these bars. So this is where it can get kind of tricky. So the best way to do this, I found, is to set it down on top of the wheel holder so you can kind of have a nice platform to kind of build this whole thing up. And then simply taking one of your top bars right here, and there'll be a little square that this kind of clips down into. I can show you here. So if you look right down in here, there's a little square. That nut or bolt, that bolt will actually fit right down in there, and now we can start tightening it down. You want to get this first one tightened down prior to actually tightening down everything. Make sure it's straight before you get it too tight. Now that we got that in place, we can go ahead and take this other bar and we can place it in here. So it'll look something like this. So now that you've got the bars put in place here, we can go ahead and run the bolt. This will kind of tie these all together. And we can put a washer and a nut on here. It's very important that you get these bars lined up before you get it fully tightened down. Now that we've got that on there, we can go ahead and add the back of this plate. And you can either do this part on top of the rack, or you can just go ahead and do it now. I just personally prefer to add in a bolt or two here to make it stable. So when I pick it up, it's easy to put on the upper mast. Washer on, and then grab another M8 bolt. Slide it in on this side. Now this will be put together enough to where we can pop it on there and it'll stay on the upper mast just fine. So that's how you do that for your 5-bike rack. Just make sure that this little notch is facing forward on the side of the logos. Okay, the next few steps are actually pretty easy, and it's just a lot of bolts that we have to put in. Put the front of the logo facing forward and slide this on the upper portion. And then we're going to go ahead and put bolts in every single hole, including the upper parts right here, and then we'll start putting our wheel holders on. So there should not be a hole in the upper part of the rack that doesn't have a bolt in it whenever you're done. Now the lower part, you are going to have some areas that you may not have used bolts on. Okay, so looking at this a little bit closer, this is what the upper mast should look like now on your 5-bike rack. If you don't have the 5-bike rack, basically it would look this exact same way, minus the wheel holder up top at this point. You've got the upper bars all attached and the center pieces with the JB logo on there and all the bolts put in. The next step is going to be super easy. It's just installing the wheel holders across the top. Let's go ahead and do that. And then again, whenever you install the wheel holders, just make sure that they're all facing the same way with the strap hook facing out. And you'll just simply take 2 M8 bolts with washers, and then you'll slide them down through the top. Okay, now that your rack is fully assembled, we just have a few additional things to add, like the wheel straps, the pedal straps, and then all of the end caps that will cover up any of the additional holes. Let's go ahead and let's get that done. To add the rubber straps, just simply hook them around this main hook right here in front of the rack. That's why it was important to make sure that this hook was facing the front. Next up, we can take our pedal straps and start looping them through each one of the pedal strap holes right here. Now you can install the plastic grommets on each of the end caps and then also the end caps on the wheel holders. And that's it. That's how you assemble your JB rack, whether you have the 3-bike rack all the way up to the 6-bike rack, with special instructions on how to handle the 5-bike rack. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoy your JB racks.